Good evening. Following the tragic loss of a dear friend and business partner earlier this week, I was made to reflect on just how precious and fleeting life can be, and it can just fly by in a moment. So we all need to make the best of our time on this earth. And she certainly did pack so much into her life that she probably did more in her short life than most people would do in 3 lifetimes. So we can celebrate that at least. Now, someone once said to me that there are 2 certain things in life. One is death and the other is taxes. Unfortunately, taxes do not end when you die. The government still wants their share of your estate before you hand it on to your beneficiaries. That's the key. Before you hand it on to your beneficiaries, before it's released to your beneficiaries, they want their share of the tax. Now, even though you've built up your savings, maybe your house, any property, any investments, you built them up from money that was pretty much taxed money. Like, you earned that money, you paid tax on the money before you got it, and then you build it up and they tax the interest on accounts and the interest on property income, or the rent on property income, the dividends on shares and so on. And then at the end, after paying all that tax, paying money to earn it, paying money on the growth and everything, the government still then wants to put its hand out and take a share of your hard-earned savings, and then they spend it. They spend your money, and you get people from the left wing saying, why should people inherit money? Why should people inherit all this money? It should go to the state and all this sort of thing. Well, I don't believe it. I talk about this in my book, Yes, Money Can Buy You Happiness. It's not just about earning money and building up money. It's about preserving it and preserving the wealth for who you want it to go to, whether it's your favourite charity or your family, your children, your grandchildren, or whatever it is. It should be your choice. And right, you can't change the system, right? I can't change what the government wants to do, but you can take steps to legally mitigate inheritance tax liabilities. Now, have a look at my article on the billionaire Duke of Westminster that legally avoids several £billion of inheritance tax. They're one of the richest families in the UK, one of the richest families in the world in property terms, and they managed to cascade their wealth down the generations by using largely trusts and other methods. Now, you need to take advice on this. Obviously, it's not something you can just learn on a podcast and go and do it yourself. But there are 3 common methods that are used. One is wills, making the right will in the right way. The second is trusts, the use of trusts, and this is a massively complex area of law. And the third thing is life assurance. Now, there's an old saying also that, you've heard the saying, where there's a will, there's a way. Well, there's another saying that says, where there's a will, there's a relative. And, when somebody dies, relatives you haven't seen for years just turn up, don't they? And looking for something, looking what they can get, looking for an inheritance. Now, even though you don't think you own very much, you might think, well, I haven't got much, I've just got my house, or I've just got this or that. It's still important to make a will, because a will is also an expression of your wishes as well. It's not just about handing down money, it's all sorts of things. Now, if you die without a will, which is known as dying intestate, it sounds very painful, the state will make one for you effectively and distribute your estate according to the laws of intestacy. Now, for some people it might be fine. I mean, if you've got a parent and the beneficiary is a child, that's fine. But then if there's no child, they start looking at other relatives. So there's a set process for it. Now, if no beneficiaries can be found, the money potentially will go to the state. Again, you've lost it. Whereas you could have left that money or property or whatever it is to a favourite charity or some cause you find close to you. So look, here are some things that I want you to consider today because this really brought it home to me this week. Now, first of all, make a will. Now, even if you think your situation is simple and I'm just going to leave the money to my wife or leave the money to my spouse or my children, you should still make a will, because it's important that you have these things down in writing. The second thing is have it done professionally. Now you can get wills done by online services. You can go down the stationers and get a ready-made will off the shelf and write it out. And so, yeah, you can get basic wills online and that sort of thing, but I don't recommend it. You don't want a will to be open to change. You don't want relatives turning up and trying to challenge the will later on, or claim that it's not valid for one reason or another, or say, well, that's not a valid will, there might be another will, or something like that. And also, you could make mistakes. The way you, for a married couple, the way you write a will could have a big difference on how much inheritance tax is paid down the line. So definitely use a professional. I wouldn't choose this as something as a sort of DIY job. Now, you can include certain things in your will, such as whether you want to be buried or cremated, where you'd like to be buried, what type of funeral do you want? Do you want a religious funeral? Do you want a civic service? Do you want a fun service? What songs you might want to hear at the or be played at your funeral? All sorts of things that are not just about the money side of things. Now, make sure people can find your will. Your solicitor can hold the original. A will company might be able to hold the original, but make sure it's accessible. You don't just tuck it away in a trunk somewhere in the loft and nobody can find it. Now, the other thing is, think about how your family will pay for the funeral. Do you have insurance, for instance? Do you have a funeral plan or a prepaid funeral with a reputable firm, i.e. a firm, I don't know, I'm thinking of national firms like the Co-op that are going to be there in 20, 30, 40 years time, rather than a sort of a one-man band shop. But that's something you might want to think about. Now, if you look at funeral directors, now there are funeral directors in the streets where I grew up that many, many years ago that are still there. The same firms are still there. You don't normally see funeral directors closing down, do you? They're just there. They're a permanent fixture. You can say on the corner where that funeral director is, or they're always there, aren't they? They generally don't go out of business because people are all. We don't like to think about it, but we're all going to die at some stage, and then the funeral's there to say hello. Give us your money, and it is quite expensive. So you need to make sure you have pretty much money that can be in the hands of your beneficiaries, but because when you die, a lot of people don't realise that your assets are effectively frozen, and your family will not be able to access your money until a grant of probate has been made. Now, a basic funeral can cost anything between £3,000 and £5,000. Yeah, £3,000 and £5,000, and that will have to be paid in advance. That will have to be paid up front. So your family's going to have to find that money before they can claim any money back from your estate or get hold of any money from your estate. Now, that might be fine. If it's a husband and wife situation and both got their own money, yeah, they can use their own money to pay for the funeral. But if it's just a single person and they've got children and family, and all the money's in that one person's name, it's going to be difficult to access that money. So you need to sort of make sure they've got access to that money. Now, some funeral plans will cater for that. Prepaid funerals were obviously they're fine. And you've got to also remember that £3,000 to £5,000 is just for the funeral directors to deal with the remains, the body, to transport it to the graveyard and do the church service and that sort of thing. So that's for basically like 3 or 4 hours work and a wooden box. If you break it down to that level, there's a lot more administration that goes into it apart from that. So you've got to think about that. And there are also other costs, such as a graveyard plot, which can be thousands of pounds. Headstones and all these things, and charges made by cemeteries and crematoriums. So think about that. Make sure you've got adequate life insurance for your dependents to cover these things. They should also think about maybe putting your insurance into trust so that it doesn't form part of your estate when you die. So when I say your estate, that's the value of all the goods and money and savings and property. So if you had an estate, a typical property in London could be anywhere from £500,000 to £1 million now. So a lot of people are going to hit that £500,000 threshold already just from the house. But if you have an insurance policy that then, so you're insured for £500,000, you've got a house for £500,000, and the insurance policy pays out, that's going to make your estate £1 million, and anything over 500,000, you're going to pay a lot of tax on it, probably up to 40%. So, there are ways of writing life assurance in trust so that it then goes outside of your estate and then it's a separate entity. So that doesn't form part of your estate and it's not taxed in that way. And it also means that the beneficiary can get their hands on the money a lot quicker than waiting for probate. So think about that. And I was in financial services for 25 years, and almost everyone I met, maybe 99% of people I met, were underinsured. Husbands, you'd say to husbands, say you've got a husband who's a breadwinner and the wife's not working, she's got young children. I said, what would you do if you died? How would they manage? And he said, well, she's got the house, hasn't she? Like the house is going to just produce this income that they need to live on every month. They really said these sort of things. It's unbelievable how they said things. Or she can get a job, or I've even heard, well, she can get married again, I suppose. It was unbelievable. So for the sake of maybe £10 a month, 15, they wouldn't pay that extra money to make sure that the wife and the children could still live in the lifestyle that they were still living in now. So it was unbelievable. And people even had mortgages that were not even protected by insurance. A lot of people take out a mortgage and buy a property, but they don't take out a mortgage protection policy that pays off the mortgage when they die. Obviously, if you've got dependents and you die and you leave a whacking great mortgage that's costing $1,000 or $1,500 a month, and then you take out one of the breadwinners, how are they going to manage that? How are they going to pay it? Whereas if you had mortgage protection insurance, it would just be cleared off and the house is then mortgage free. Lenders in the past, building societies, used to insist on either mortgage protection or an endowment policy to cover the mortgage. And that policy used to be assigned to the lender by the solicitors, so they would get their money back straight away. That's all gone out the window now. They don't even insist on it. So it's actually a sad thing, because a lot of people will take out a mortgage, rush around, get everything sorted out, and forget to take out any insurance. And these insurance policies for a young couple can be very, very cheap. They can be £6-10 a month, £15 a month. The term insurance is very cheap. Now, there are lots of different types of insurance. You need to see your advisor about that. But, protecting any debts and mortgages should be your first priority. And then the next priority is protecting your income, or income replacement insurance that gives them money if you die to replace your income. Because you are a valuable asset. Warren Buffett once said to students, how much would you sell your lifetime earnings to me if I could give you a lump sum and then keep your lifetime earnings? It was an interesting question, because you might think your house is your most valuable asset, but probably you are your most valuable asset, because the amount of money you will earn over the years. And if you take you out of the picture, where is that money going to come from? Now, finally, I'd say, with inheritance tax, think about this inheritance. I mentioned this just now, but think about inheritance tax. Thousands of ordinary families end up paying inheritance tax, quite unexpectedly. They think, well, we wouldn't be paying inheritance tax because we're not the Duke of Westminster. Well, the Duke of Westminster doesn't pay inheritance tax, but a lot of middle class and ordinary families end up paying inheritance tax. So you've got to think about this, how you can mitigate this. Because, a lot of people say, well, I hear people saying, well, I'd like my children to keep this house. It's a lovely house and I'm sure they'll be able to keep it. Well, maybe they won't be able to keep it because they might have to sell it to pay the inheritance tax before they can actually get their hands on it. And that can be a tragedy. So you need to think about how you're going to provide this. One way is to provide an insurance policy that pays out in trust to the beneficiaries to pay the inheritance tax. But there are all sorts of ways you can do this. So you need to take advice. You can also make use of lifetime gifts and lifetime allowances to your children or grandchildren. These can be tax-free in many countries. So you can gift away legally some of the money, instead of waiting until you die. This might be appropriate for someone who has grandchildren or great-grandchildren even, to make gifts during their lifetime. But you don't want to make so many gifts that you're left with nothing yourself. It's a bit of a difficult balancing act, isn't it? So finally, look, don't leave things to chance. Take professional advice from a solicitor or financial advisor and make sure you get that will sorted out, because believe me, I've seen a lot of arguments over wills. I've seen a lot of disputes. You hear about disputes going to court and long protracted court cases where wills have been challenged and all this sort of stuff. So if you do it properly and do it right, then it's cast iron, it's set in stone, nobody can challenge it. And this is why Jim Rohn once talked about building a wall around your family, a financial wall around your family that nobody can break through. And part of this is taking this sort of advice. So thanks for listening and have a great weekend. Thank you.